This message isn't asking you to decide if it belongs to you. It already does. Timing brought you here. Awareness kept you here. And whatever phase of life you're standing in right now is precisely the phase this message was meant to reach. When we look at the cards that surfaced, the energy speaks immediately and clearly. The Four of Wands appears first, followed by the Ten of Cups, with justice present beneath everything, quietly influencing the entire message. These are not subtle cards. Together, they form a narrative of emotional arrival, balance restored, and a life finally beginning to feel right. Let's start with justice, because this card reframes everything. Justice here is not about punishment, confrontation, or someone else finally being exposed. This isn't a moment where the universe dramatizes your past pain. Instead, this is justice through alignment. Justice through reward. Justice through the simple but powerful experience of getting to live a life that no longer mirrors what hurt you. This is the kind of justice that doesn't need an audience. It speaks for itself. The Four of Wands introduces a sense of grounding that may have been missing for a long time. This is the energy of stability after chaos, peace after uncertainty, and belonging after feeling displaced. It represents a moment where you stop bracing yourself for things to fall apart. You begin to trust that what you're building can actually hold. Whether this shows up as a relationship, a home, a community, or internal security, it brings the feeling of being safe enough to relax. Then the Ten of Cups deepens the story even further. This card isn't about fleeting happiness or surface-level success. It's about emotional fulfillment that reaches into your daily life. The kind that affects how you wake up in the morning and how you feel when the day is quiet. It speaks to harmony, shared joy, emotional openness, and the feeling that your heart finally has room to breathe. This is happiness that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. What makes this combination so powerful is that it suggests you didn't stumble into this outcome. You earned it. There's a strong sense that you've recently moved through a major period of internal transformation. Old versions of you had to dissolve, beliefs had to be questioned, patterns had to be broken. You may have experienced moments that felt like loss, endings, or deep exhaustion, but those moments were clearing space, not taking something away. The presence of the Sun and the Wheel of Fortune reinforces this shift. This is a turning point where momentum changes direction. Things that once felt delayed, blocked, or unfair begin to move with surprising ease. Not because you forced them, but because you're finally aligned with what you've been asking for. The wheel turns when the timing is right, and the sun rises when clarity is ready to be received. There is also something very specific here about love. Not just romantic love, but love as an environment. Love as a state of being. You may soon notice that interactions soften, opportunities feel warmer, and people respond to you differently. There's an increased sense of being valued, welcomed, and acknowledged. It's as if life itself is meeting you with open arms instead of resistance. What stands out most is how close this shift is. This isn't a distant promise or a vague future vision. Over the next couple of months, the contrast will be undeniable. You'll be able to look back and clearly see how much has changed, not just externally, but in how you experience yourself and the world around you. Things won't feel as heavy. You won't feel as alone. and you won't question your worth the way you once did. The appearance of the Death card marks a turning point that words barely do justice to. What you have lived through cannot be measured by time alone, because it wasn't just a phase. It was a dismantling, a shedding of identities, attachments, and emotional armor that once kept you alive but could no longer carry you forward. This wasn't a visible transformation. It happened quietly, internally, in moments when no one was watching and no one was applauding. That is why very few people will ever truly understand what it cost you to arrive here. The Death card speaks to endings that happen at the core level of the soul. It's the kind of ending where you don't simply walk away, you outgrow. Old fears lose their grip. Old patterns stop making sense. Even the way you react to pain changes. You didn't just survive this period. You were reshaped by it. What once defined you no longer has the same power, and that alone marks a rebirth that cannot be reversed. But here's what makes this moment so significant. The transformation is not complete. The Fool steps in immediately, and with it comes movement, innocence, and possibility. The Fool doesn't erase what you've been through. It frees you from carrying it as a burden. This card represents the first step forward taken without fear, without expectation, and without needing reassurance from the past. It is the courage to move before the path fully reveals itself. This next phase doesn't unfold slowly. The energy around this shift is fast, decisive, and unmistakable. The timeline is short. 2 weeks, not months. These 2 weeks function like a bridge between who you were forced to become and who you now get to be by choice. Everything accelerates here. Thoughts change, perceptions shift. External circumstances begin mirroring the internal work you've already completed. Where the earlier stages of your transformation felt like a constant internal battle, as if you were resisting collapse while trying to rebuild at the same time. This phase feels entirely different. You're no longer fighting life, you're responding to it. The struggle gives way to momentum. Instead of asking for signs, you start receiving confirmation. This is also the moment where manifestation shifts from theory into experience. Desires you held quietly, the ones you didn't even speak out loud because they felt too fragile or too distant, begin moving toward you. Not in overwhelming bursts, but in aligned steps. Right conversations at the right time. Unexpected openings. Subtle but undeniable progress that reassures you that nothing you endured was wasted. The Fool carries the energy of trust. Not blind trust, but earned trust. Trust that came from walking through uncertainty and discovering you could survive it. You no longer need to be guarded in the same way. You're allowed to explore again, to hope again, to step forward without rehearsing every possible outcome. The next 2 weeks open a doorway that cannot be ignored. This is not a gentle adjustment or a quiet internal realization. This is a period where change announces itself through contrast, clarity, and release. If you found this message, you're standing at the edge of a shift that reshapes how you experience freedom, control, and self-trust. The energy moving towards you is active, undeniable, and intentionally disruptive, not to harm you, but to free you. Now, I would like to request that if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so quickly. This will give us a lot of support, and I'll be able to connect with your energy more easily. And if you're enjoying the reading, please share your feedback in the comments with a heart emoji. I will definitely read your comments. The Eight of Swords appears first, revealing the state you are emerging from. This card speaks to restriction, but not the kind imposed by fate. It reflects limits that formed over time through fear, conditioning, and repeated self-doubt. You may have felt boxed in by circumstances, by expectations, or by your own internal dialogue. Even when options technically existed, they didn't feel accessible. The mind kept looping. The body stayed braced. The sense of "I can't" became familiar, even if it never felt right. But the Eight of Swords also carries an important truth. The confinement was never permanent. The cage was constructed from beliefs that once protected you, but eventually turned into barriers. Over time, survival strategies hardened into walls. These next 2 weeks bring awareness to that reality, not as an idea, but as lived experience. Then comes the Tower, and this is where the energy intensifies. The Tower doesn't gently suggest change, it removes what cannot be carried forward. Structures that once felt stable begin to destabilize. Old assumptions crack. Situations that kept you contained lose their grip. This can feel sudden, surprising, or even overwhelming at first, but it is precise. Nothing falls unless it was already misaligned. Together, the Eight of Swords and the Tower describe liberation through collapse. The mental enclosure dissolves because it can no longer withstand truth. The moment the illusion breaks, so does its power. What once felt inescapable starts to look temporary. What once felt controlling starts to feel irrelevant. Over these 2 weeks, you realize that the door was never locked. You were just taught not to push it. This transformation doesn't stay in the mind. It moves through the body. Energy that has been stored for a long time, unexpressed emotion, suppressed instinct, unprocessed experience, begins to release. This clearing can feel physical, visceral, and unexpected. It's not uncommon to feel waves of discomfort, sensitivity, or strong bodily reactions as your system lets go of what it has been holding for too long. There is a strong sense of purging here. Not of thoughts, but of residue. Old emotional imprints move out without needing a story. Your body recognizes what no longer belongs. There may be moments where something feels suddenly unpleasant, heavy, or intolerable, even if you can't explain why. That response is your inner intelligence saying, "This doesn't come with me anymore." This release centers around personal power and emotional truth, the places where confidence, boundaries, and authenticity live. As this area clears, something shifts fundamentally. You don't just think differently, you stand differently. Decisions feel cleaner. Reactions soften. The need to explain or justify yourself begins to fade. What's crucial to understand is that this upheaval is not chaos for its own sake. The tower only falls when a structure has outlived its purpose. These next 2 weeks strip away what was never meant to last, so that what is meant to endure can finally take root. This is not loss. It's correction. For some time now, there's been a subtle veil surrounding your creative center. Not a blockage, not resistance, but a kind of intentional stillness. This fog around your sacral space wasn't there to stop you. It was there to guard you. While it may have felt like your manifestations were lagging behind your intentions, that pause was deliberate. Your creative energy needed to be protected while deeper layers of your system prepared for release. Creation was placed in safekeeping while purification took priority. Beneath that veil, powerful internal work has been underway. Your foundation, your sense of self-direction, and your emotional core have all been moving through an intense process of refinement. This wasn't a single clearing or a sudden breakthrough. It was sequential, deliberate, and demanding. One center activated, then the next, then the next. Each phase required you to face something honestly, let something go completely, and then rest before continuing. This kind of inner restructuring often stretches across months, and it asks for patience even when answers feel overdue. As this process reaches completion, the energy shifts dramatically. The center associated with confidence, intention, and forward momentum doesn't simply open, it erupts. What had been held back for safety now surges forward with force and clarity. There is a noticeable return of creative hunger, motivation, and direction. Ideas don't drift anymore. They arrive fully formed. Desire sharpens. You stop negotiating with yourself about what you want and begin moving toward it with certainty. At the same time, something significant is happening outside of you. A version of your life that never belonged to you is falling apart. Someone else's expectations, their imagined future for you, their assumptions about your role, their comfort-driven vision, can no longer exist. That fantasy wasn't built on your truth, and because of that, it was never sustainable. Now, the people who invested in that version of you are being forced to witness its collapse. What they never accounted for was your willingness to choose authenticity over approval. They expected adaptation. They expected compliance. They believed you would remain inside the shape they designed because it was easier, quieter, and familiar. What shocked them was your readiness to dismantle everything that felt false, even if it meant burning bridges, releasing identities, or stepping into uncertainty without guarantees. And you did exactly that. You walked away from a life that required you to stay unconscious just to maintain peace. You chose awareness over convenience, choice over obligation, direction over expectation. You refused to keep pouring energy into a future that didn't reflect who you are becoming. That decision, the one that felt risky, lonely, or misunderstood, was the ignition point for everything that follows. Now, you are stepping into a period defined by expansion and return. Abundance begins to appear not as coincidence, but as alignment. It flows because your creative force is no longer fragmented or suppressed. It moves outward cleanly, directly, carrying intention instead of hesitation. What you build now isn't influenced by guilt, permission, or compromise. It is shaped by clarity and self-trust. This is not success borrowed from someone else's blueprint. This is not fulfillment built on compromise. This is not a life shaped by expectation. This is creation that comes from your center, powerful, conscious, and sustainable. The fog has lifted because the system is clear. The fire has returned because it finally has space to move. And what unfolds next carries the unmistakable imprint of someone who chose truth, even when it cost them everything familiar. The Eight of Wands signals a surge that cannot be ignored. This is not gradual momentum. It is acceleration in its purest form. Energy that was once latent, slow, or hesitant is now thrust into motion. Decisions, opportunities, and manifestations that once seemed distant are arriving with astonishing speed. The next 2 weeks will feel like watching life itself shift and fast forward. Like a river breaking through a dam and rushing towards the sea. This is the kind of movement that feels both sudden and inevitable, as if the universe finally released the handbrake it had held for so long. What makes this moment extraordinary is the sense of inner alignment accompanying it. You're not being swept along blindly, you're consciously flowing with the surge. There is a deep, almost serene acceptance within you, a recognition of what you can influence, and a calm surrender to what you cannot. You're not anxious because on a subtle level, you know the direction of this movement. You feel it at the core of your being. This is right. This is timely. This is divinely orchestrated. Even when the external world seems chaotic or unpredictable, your inner center remains tranquil, anchored in certainty. This tranquility is vital because it signals the collapse of old structures built on fear. The cage that panic once constructed around you, the one made of doubt, hesitation, and imagined limitations, is disintegrating completely. It burns itself out like old timber, ash to ash, leaving no trace. What once constrained you is now gone, and with it comes a liberation so profound that your energy can finally move unhindered. The space once occupied by fear and resistance is now fertile ground for creation and manifestation. Rising from this clearing is a new perspective, represented by the Ten of Pentacles. From here, the view is expansive, stabilizing, and abundant. This card is more than material success. It is the embodiment of long-term fulfillment, security, and achievement that honors both effort and alignment. You're not just moving upward, you're stepping onto a foundation built to last. This ascent is both literal and symbolic. You're climbing higher, but you're also creating a life that is resilient, grounded, and rich in meaning. The path to this vantage point is dramatic and transformative. At times, it may have felt like you were falling, losing control, or watching structures around you collapse. But what looked like descent was really a recalibration, a purposeful grounding that prepared you to rise stronger than ever. You touched the earth, found your footing, and realized your stability was greater than you had imagined. That feeling of falling was necessary for you to trust your own foundation and your own power. And now, the launch begins. Once your footing is secure, the surge of the Eight of Wands propels you upward with incredible force. There is no hesitation, no second guessing. Every step you take is aligned with intention and momentum. The energy moves swiftly, almost like a spark igniting an entire forest. One action triggers another, and the forward motion becomes unstoppable. The trajectory feels effortless because it is supported by everything you have done, endured, and learned. As we step into the energy of death, a presence emerges, a male spirit guide, older, wise, and deeply attuned to your journey. This figure carries the weight of experience and empathy, and his energy is intimately connected to the transformations you've endured. Alongside him appears the Ten of Swords, a card that speaks to endings so profound they feel almost unbearable, the kind of pain that leaves marks on your body, mind, and soul. It has been agonizing for this guide to witness your passage through such intensity. Every moment of struggle, every night of uncertainty, every choice to burn down what no longer served you has left an imprint, not just in your life, but in the way the universe watches you navigate transformation. The death period you've been walking through was not gentle. It demanded courage, resilience, and the willingness to face endings so complete that the ground beneath your feet seemed to vanish. There is a heaviness here, almost physical in its quality. Your posture may have shifted under the weight of all you carried, the sorrow, the doubt, the loss, the letting go. There's even a sense of dissociation, a quiet space inside, where the mind and body try to make sense of what has been endured. And the Ten of Swords reflects that, not as judgment, but as acknowledgement. Pain so profound that it cannot be erased, only honored. Yet in the midst of this, there is a silent companionship. Your spirit guide stands not above, not judging, but beside you. There is no need for explanations, no requirement for words, no urgency to justify or rationalize the suffering. The acknowledgement alone carries weight, the recognition that what you faced was immensely difficult. Painful, yes, but not meaningless. Every end, every collapse, every sensation of hitting rock bottom was a necessary clearing for what comes next. Stand together in that truth. Stand in the quiet recognition of the depth of your journey. Feel the resonance of being witnessed, of not being alone, of having someone who honors the full extent of your struggle. Let it sink in. This pain was real, and it was witnessed. And within that witnessing, there is a sacred space, a space where healing begins, not because the pain disappears, but because it is acknowledged, held, and honored. The energy of the tower is unmistakable. It arrives like lightning, sudden and irreversible, dismantling everything built on illusions, expectations, or external pressure. Alongside it appear the Knight of Pentacles and the Lovers, signaling not only the upheaval itself, but the profound way you will rebuild, carefully, intentionally, and in alignment with your heart. The tower doesn't simply collapse structures for destruction's sake. It clears space for authenticity, for clarity, and for the life that truly belongs to you. When everything hits the ground, when the fantasies others held for your life, the imposed expectations, and the stories they wrote on your behalf have all turned to dust, you stand at the epicenter of the aftermath. And here is where your power becomes undeniable. You are not daunted. You are not defeated. You blaze fully in your own light, radiating a presence that says, without a word, this is mine, this is my path, and it's far from over. There is a strange elegance in the way you navigate this collapse. You didn't fight. You didn't argue. You simply allowed the natural force of truth to do its work. And now, when the dust settles and the chaos has spent itself, there is nothing left for others to throw at you. Their blows, their expectations, their imagined limitations, they have all expended themselves. That was the best they could do. And yet, even with it all gone, you remain unshaken, unbroken, fully conscious of your own vitality. The Knight of Pentacles underscores your methodical approach in this moment. You are grounded, aware, and strategic, even amid chaos. You take measured steps, planting each foot with intention, knowing exactly where you want to go. The energy of patience and perseverance is yours, even in the wake of collapse, ensuring that your rebuilding is not hurried or forced, but steady, powerful, and enduring. And then there is the Lovers, a reminder that this journey is not only structural, but deeply personal. Your alignment with truth, with love, and with the life you consciously choose becomes your guiding compass. It is not about victory over others. It is about victory over illusion, over compromise, over the parts of yourself that once settled for less. You reclaim your sovereignty, not by conflict, but by presence. In this moment, it almost feels like you're daring the universe, or perhaps even the world, to keep up with you. You ask silently or with a knowing smile, "Are you tired? Because I'm just getting started." What once sought to limit you has fallen away, leaving only clarity, energy, and purpose. You are ready to create, to expand, to live fully, fiercely, and consciously. Okay, so I'll end the video here. I'll see you soon with another new video. Thank you until then.